Hey, welcome to another episode of Drinking About Conspiracies.
That's right. Hi, all you internet land dwellers and other people tapping into Earth's uh, ionospheric radiation emissions from other planets, star systems, dimensions. We are broadcasting live from SoCal and various spots in SoCal near the beach in the center of the big sprawl, and from another beach town further south. Good morning, villagers, as they say in The Prisoner. Today, our special guest is Mr. Vinnie Caggiano, who describes himself as an eclectic guitarist. Not electric, necessarily. It could be electric, right, Vinnie? Or it could be acoustic, but you're eclectic.
Yes, and actually, I do have to say that I describe myself literally as an electric guitarist. There's almost a completely different technique on acoustic guitar.
Okay.
So, although I could play acoustic, I specialize in electric. So it runs both ways, eclectic or electric, but I just like the pun.
Right. So just to finish the introduction here, so we've got our producer guy, Core, who's should be on the screen at some point. There he is. There he is, popping in. And myself, I'm your secret sage research droid with the wild, crazy wizard hairdo, unscripted twist, aka Twistor. And we're going to be talking about the Beatles. So this is a little bit of a change in tone for the show so far. We've delved into some. We spent a lot of time talking about the big thing that everybody else is talking about right now for a few episodes. We went into deep esoterica. We've talked about ultra terrestrials and crypto terrestrials and Fordiana, the philosophy of Robert Anton Wilson, the Illuminatus trilogy, UFOs. We haven't done too many things that go bump in the night yet, but maybe Vinnie will throw one in at the end of the show for us if he can summon one up. Like an encounter with something that goes bump in the night. We haven't done anything about the Night Stalker yet. He's another one of my iconic conspiratainment figures.
And that's like before most people's time. When they hear the Night Stalker, they think Richard Ramirez.
No, right. This is the Night Stalker of 70s TV. Gavin, what was the actor's name? Gavin. Anyway, he was a journalist who was always getting hounded for himself hounding paranormal apparitions and murderers and sorcerers and weird things, creepy stuff. It was a fun show. And it was always wearing sneakers, and he had this funky little white hat running around with his tape recorder and notepad. So I salute the Night Stalker as one of the epistemic heroes of conspiracy ideation.
Oh my God, that's the second conspiratainment show that I have never watched, Jason.
Oh my God, Vinnie. Okay, well, yeah. we're gonna educate you. But now it's time for you to educate us about Beatles conspiracies.
All right. Well, first of all, I just want to clarify something. I don't refer to myself as you might want to know. What authority I have to, talk
That's
about
right.
the Beatles.
Thank you.
Right.
Thank you.
And to be quite honest, I don't call myself a Beatles scholar whatsoever. I describe myself, I'm a kind of a musical forensic investigator of the Beatles music.
Whoa.
So I have I'm doing a whole entire series with the infamous James Corbett, analyzing Beatles music and breaking down the music theory and how it all works. I'm a music theory guy, and I adore the Beatles, so of course I've been in on a lot of the conspiracy theory talk about them. And in fact,
Cool.
by the way, James Corbett and I did a podcast called "Everything I Know About Conspiracies I Learned from the Beatles." So
No way. Well,
yeah,
we got okay.
yeah.
We'll try to throw that link into the show description after we when we're done. That's definitely a cool link to call out.
Yeah.
Yeah, Corbett is
Yeah.
awesome. For anybody who doesn't know James Corbett, CorbettReport.com is some of the best critical analysis anywhere right now for a while.
Yeah,
in my opinion.
he's truly. I'm sorry, a truly sober investigator. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So Vinnie, so you make a living by teaching guitar to other people, and you're a forensic. You say, what did you call yourself? A musical forensic investigator?
Yeah, of the Beatles in particular.
Of the Beatles in particular. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I just ran into one of our old mutual compadres who said, yeah, Vinny's the guy for the Beatles. He's the guy.
All right. Yeah.
So,
mm-hmm.
where do we start? I mean, do you want to start with in the kind of like the just kind of random Beatles rumors, cheesy stuff? We want to go for the big heavyweight one, and then work our way around.
We know the glaringly obvious one, but you and I have a mutual friend that just hit me to one I hadn't heard, and apparently there's extensive research done on this, and he believes it, that John Lennon is still alive. And that would be Daniel.
Ooh, the good one. That's fresh.
Yeah.
John Lennon is still alive.
Yeah, you know Daniel, right? I forget.
He's on Mars. Is it last time I saw him was on Mars? So actually, that might kind of make sense. I was at this terraforming party on Mars where they're growing kale and there's a Coca-Cola logo nearby, right?
Yeah. Reminds me of a meme I saw today, which was, instead of terraforming Mars, why don't you terraform the Gobi Desert? Makes sense to me.
Yeah, why not? I mean that's a personal question mark, is why these massive deserts can remain deserts for so long when ecosystems and climates are constantly shifting around and moving here and dying there. But anyway, that's goes into a climate change research footnote zone. Let's stick to the Beatles. Let's stay on topic here.
Yeah, so our mutual friend Daniel sent me a PDF, and it was just so extensive and so involved I didn't bother to read it. But he's all fired up that he loves John Lennon, and he's very sentimental about the Beatles, and he wants John to be alive.
That's charming. I'm so excited to see a new conspiracy theory like that. With Lennon was never killed. I mean, does it explain how the assassination didn't actually happen, or?
That's what I mean. I don't have the I didn't really go into the specifics on it. I since don't even have the PDF anymore. But we have to bring it up with Daniel. He's really fired up about the whole thing. So
we can do that in a follow-up panel.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there you go. Well, one of the conspiracy theories that. The whole you and I discussed this on Westminster the other day, but this Theodore Adorno, Tavistock Institute, wrote the Beatles music, and that came up in the podcast I did with James, and it was cool working with him because he's such a consummate researcher.
Our listeners don't know what the Tavistock Institute is.
Tavistock Institute.
Nor do I.
Do you know the details about it, Jason? Like where it's located? Somewhere in Sweden, maybe? I forget.
It's London.
Oh, London. It's London. Oh, okay. Yeah. I didn't know that. Okay, yeah.
Yeah, just do your riff on it, and then if I need to, I'll interject somewhere along the way.
Yeah, I think it's called the Tavistock Institute for either Social Research or Social Engineering. I don't know if they come out with the word engineering, but that's their general title. And there's a conspiracy theory, like these guys are supposedly secretly controlling, the direction humanity goes in, blah, 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 that whole evil guys at the top stuff. And the story goes that there was the 60s movement was not organic. The whole thing was engineered, and the Beatles were at the forefront of this engineering, and so on and so forth.
Right. Go on.
More about Tavistock. That's the long and short of what I know about it. I will say that
we could talk more about Tavistock later. Let's just sort of like stick with the overt.
I think like we should stay with like one thing while we explore it. So it's not like we should come back to the Tavistock.
Well, it's just I have never done a personal deep dive on Tavistock. I've read many references to it, and I know some other pieces of the puzzle, but then each of those becomes a digression in and of itself. So,
but I mean otherwise it's just going to be like, yeah, I heard this one. Paul was dead. Yeah, okay, the next one was
Tavistock was it's a psychological research institute based in London through the 60s, and some people who were on the edge of the counterculture were also affiliated with Tavistock, and in the last decade or so, right-wing conspiracy researchers have attempted to bundle. Well, actually, right-wing. It begins with Drugs Inc. and sorry, you guys, I'm having my blank out moment here. The guy, the LaRouche, Lyndon LaRouche and his gang. He wrote a book called Drugs Inc. and they basically propose that the British Empire has been, and actually this isn't too far-fetched, but the British Empire has been using drugs to manipulate the world to its own ends, for ever going all the way back to the Opium Wars with the Chinese. And I mean, that's a pretty clear-cut scenario where, bumping the flow of opium into China, helped disable Chinese culture and helped
what was the deal? Brits. Like the Chinese didn't want opium sold in China anymore, and then the British interceded to force the sale of opium within China. Wasn't that
roughly maybe? I mean, I don't know the details of that history, but LaRouche in this tome called Drugs Inc., which I don't think he's the main author, but it's basically, I think it's all his ideas, takes that as a sort of as a prime example, and then tries to show how the 60s subculture was sort of promulgated in a similar way to weaken the West, which doesn't really make much sense to me, because the West is the Anglo-American Empire, and Tavistock is part of the Anglo-American system. The big central bankers and the big moneyed interests that make up the Anglo-American alliance. So anyway, it's something to look at. And then this character Jan Irvin came along later and kind of added some more detail to this narrative. And it's out there now. Robert Forte, who we did an interview with just a few weeks ago, who's a hardcore psychedelic scholar, he has pretty much come down in favor of this loose model, I guess you could say, that the CIA was responsible for shaping the counterculture beyond simply LSD escaping from its grasp, because LSD couldn't be controlled easily as a truth serum. But it does loop around, because then the claim, Vinnie, that you're bringing out is that the Beatles, because they were in London, because Tavistock was in London, Michael Hollingshead introduced piles of CIA into London in the mid-'60s. The Beatles were implicated in a social engineering program.
That's the implication. I will say this. I mean, James is a thorough researcher. He is. I asked him about Tavistock Institute, and he said to me very simply, I've looked every which way into this institute, and to tell you the truth, there's no there there. That's the way he put it to me.
Well, that makes me laugh, because I trust James Corbett's research more than a lot of other critters out there, So that's kind of interesting. But what's your personal feeling about the Beatles? I mean, they were basically deities. I mean, deities on Earth. They were channeling higher dimensional information. Where did they come up with all those tunes from? I mean, how could they pull that off? This is not normal human shit. Come on.
I'll tell you, I think they were, well, if we go back to the early days, the George Harrison quote that John and Paul wrote their worst songs before they even got famous. In other words, they got good by the time they were, becoming famous in Britain. I 100,000% believe they wrote all the material. It's ridiculous to think they didn't, because there's all this archival. One great thing about the Beatles is there's no shortage of media on them. There's tons of media. I still to this day see photographs I've never seen before of them. The very fact that the new movie is coming out based on 50 hours of untouched footage from the Let It Be movie should say something. There's a lot of media on them. And given the trail I just went on, I'm trying to remember what my point was. Oh, back in the early days, well, basically, yes, I think they wrote all the material. It shows. There's one example that's great on YouTube. You could find it, but John developing the song "She Said, She Said" off the Revolver record. And there are a number of different takes on this playlist, from the earliest takes on out to the later ones. And the song started out not sounding like the song, and you can hear him slowly changing it as it moves on, And it's all just an acoustic guitar. It's not like, record level yet. And by the time he gets to the end, you could hear how the form brings itself together. They would have to have like 50 musical scholars working 24/7 to, develop the style of John's writing and the style of Paul's writing and the style of George's writing. That's absurd. It's beyond the beyond. It wouldn't even be worth their effort, for what they were trying to achieve.
What about Ringo?
And Ringo, too. Octopus's Garden. He did write that.
Yo, what a masterpiece.
Is it? I don't even. What album is that on? I don't even know that one.
Well, they made a movie, The Yellow Submarine, and there were cartoon Beatles.
Yeah, okay, but that was one of the tracks on the Yellow Submarine album.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It was on Abbey Road as well. No, it wasn't on Yellow Submarine. It was on Abbey Road.
Seems like it should have been, though.
Right. Well, Octopus's Garden and Yellow Submarine are very kind of similar vibe.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Yeah.
See, I'm not an expert.
So Vinnie, you were just contesting a claim that the Beatles could not have written all those songs themselves. Is that right? Is that one of the conspiracy rumors or myths that's out there?
Oh, yeah, and we'll in a moment touch on Theodore Adorno, which to me is a hoot. I love this one. But I just want to say this, though. I'm kind of without having read much Robert Anton Wilson, I'm a very similar type to him in the sense that a lot of the things that he espouses, I naturally came to the same conclusions. I'm not pinning a badge on myself. It just kind of happened accidentally way. But one of the things I love that he said, and I totally agree with, is that when it comes to beliefs, he likes to try on a belief, see how it feels, and then get rid of the belief and try on a different belief. Right? So I'm very broad-minded, I allow my mind to be changed if more evidence comes up that tells me I'm wrong. I wish more people would be like this, but they aren't. In any case, this has been my thought for a while. Around the time, this is later Beatles period, like the last, quarter of their career, you could say, was Sgt. Pepper came out. The Beatles had disappeared for a year. There was no seeing them. And of course, the ongoing story, what the press was saying, are the Beatles done? They haven't come out with it. Bear in mind, they used to come out with a new album once every 6 months. That was their contract. Okay. Right? So now it's taking them a year. There's not a peep out of them. And people are, the press is saying, oh, the Beatles, have they died? Is it all over with for the band? Will they be able to make a comeback? And then they come out with this groundbreaking record called Sgt. Pepper, which changed the world. But that period is the period I think they got hooked up into the club. And you can find...
Okay, wait. They got hooked up into the club in the interval before Sgt. Pepper came out? Is that what you're suggesting?
Around and during, that's what I'm suggesting. Okay. This is my belief. This is what I believe.
Yeah. All right. Good. Go with it. Yeah.
My feeling is that the guys at the top who want to control everything, what they do is they keep their eyes on the big picture of society, and when they see a trend happening or they see somebody becoming a major influencer, like, for example, now Joe Rogan is being accused of being a CIA operative, right? So, that kind of thing where you become a big influencer, therefore they have to step in and control you, right? Because then if you have an influence over so many millions of people, well, then they're the steering wheel, whoever it is that's influencing these people. So my feeling is that it took a while for them to get inside of that whole situation with the Beatles, but around Sgt. Pepper, I believe that's when shit started to hit the fan. Am I allowed to use cuss words on this podcast?
You bet.
Okay, good, because I'm full of them.
We are an explicit podcast. Mm-hmm. Even on episodes where there's no explicit language, I label every episode explicit.
Hey, we got our first we got our first comment from a live viewer over in a little comment box.
I see that.
I don't think maybe we might get to Trump later. Who knows?
There's a comment box?
Oh. Well, on my screen.
Oh yeah, shiny pink dildo.
Can we talk about Trump, please?
No, because this episode is not about Trump.
That's right.
There's been enough talking about Trump. That's how he gets his power.
Yeah,
I can make a connection. I can make a connection.
Okay.
Dark journalist has revealed that Trump was close to the UFO files. John Lennon saw a UFO in New York. Therefore, there's a connection between the Beatles and Trump.
Okay, that's a classic conspiracy theory. That's like 10 leaps in a single bound, you know?
Right, exactly.
Conspiracy theories. Yeah.
I was just going to say I've been thinking about this a lot lately. You know how they use the term connecting the dots?
Yep.
Well, not only can you connect the dots badly, but some people add dots and then they connect it to make their picture of a unicorn, you know?
Sure.
And there's a lot of conspiracy theory that's like that. We're going to hit on that too.
Yep.
In a moment.
Yep. Well, you just divulged your own personal proto analysis. I mean, you didn't really, go too far into it. But I wasn't really expecting you to actually do that. I was thinking you might just kind of rattle off some of the sillier or more salacious, known Beatles conspiracies, and then we could, joke or riff about them. But that's interesting that you have your own thought on that the Beatles became pulled into the establishment in some form or fashion around the time of Sgt. Pepper. I'm not sure where to take that immediately. I'm a little bit inebriated, as we're supposed to be on the show. So.
You didn't specify what kind of drinking. I'm drinking coffee here. So.
Well, can I have some of your coffee right now?
You may need it.
Can you pass it over the internet tubes?
Yeah. Do you have a 3D tubes? Printer? We could 3D print some coffee.
It's broken. It's broken. It doesn't print coffee right now.
Right.
I have to feed it some coffee grounds.
Well,
okay. So that was your interesting. So you actually have a little bit of empathy or affinity for some conspiracy ideation around the Beatles. It's not just all
totally.
Bullshit.
Yeah. I'm being a musician, I grew up with the Beatles. I was in a band in high school that was basically not trying to be the Beatles, but trying to be as good as the Beatles. So they were idols of ours, and we kept track of everything. We kept track of everything they were doing. And I just want to add to what I said about, the big boys stepping in around the time of Peppers. I've tried to dig it up, and I tried to remember the guy's name, and I cannot remember it. It's right on the tip of my tongue. But some guy came out with a 6-hour, 7-hour long video relatively recently, about 8 months ago, and it was about Masonic influence on society.
Mm-hmm.
And most of it was this montage of celebrities and famous people, and they're doing, this thing and the hidden hand, well, I'd have to put that in my shirt, but the hidden hand, this thing, what I found interesting was, there's a famous photo of the Beatles around the Yellow Submarine period where Paul has the hidden hand and John is doing the 666 thing. And I thought that was it. Well, it's around that period that they joined up. But this guy had very early photos of the beginnings of the Beatles, and they were doing the same hand signs very early on. So, like Robert Anton Wilson, I have to keep a broad mind and say, well, I might not be right. I'm basing this on a feeling I have that something influenced the Beatles strongly around Peppers. But it may not be true. It could have been from the very get-go.
Core, I mean, this might be more your turf than mine. I mean, I grew up with the Beatles as a sort of background soundtrack, and I feel like I know things about them, but I don't really feel competent to talk in detail about the Beatles. I don't really have my own theories or opinions about their best albums or best music. I mean, I like one Beatles song in particular, but
which song is
just
that?
one, huh?
Well, I mean, I think it's on. It's the last track. Is it Sergeant Pepper? Wait, is Yellow Submarine an actual album, or is it just the name of the film they did?
Both.
Was it both? Okay, so it's the last track. It's All Too Much. Isn't that the title of it?
Oh, yeah.
Where it basically breaks down into pure feedback noise, chaos, and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
That's my favorite Beatles song because it sort of captures my feeling coming down off of really heavy acid trips.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, there's lots of other amazing Beatles songs. Obviously, they're just that are just iconic and have stamped themselves into the mass psyche of humanity, especially Westerners. But pretty much almost everybody on the planet has heard Beatles somewhere along the way.
Well, bear in mind, I call myself a musical forensics expert on the Beatles. All right. In other words, I look into the details of, wow, John decided to move this chord to that chord. How unusual. I've picked up on tiny little details of the work they've done. And see, this is why I could say that a good majority of the Beatles songs are my favorite. Because it's remarkable what they did. It like once you know about music theory and how it all works, when the very early Beatles, there's a song called "If I Fell," very very kind of dorky old school song. John Lennon in the intro does what's called a half-step modulation. People like Barry Manilow used to do those things, but when Barry Manilow did it, it would slap you in the face like, "Oh, here we are, we're in another key, wow." John manages to sinuously get us to a different key with barely any conscious registration of the fact. It's truly remarkable modulation. But you'd have to know about music and music theory to really get this. My belief is that modulating to a different key is an art form. And a great composer knows how to take you to a different key without you even knowing it. You got there. Like, are you familiar with the song Penny Lane?
Sure, obviously that's, again.
It's one of my favorite Beatles songs. That song is in 2 keys. You probably didn't feel it at all or notice it at all, but Penny Lane, the verses are in the key of B and the choruses are in the key of A. So
yeah, my music theory is non-existent, so
I'm sure. I didn't expect you to know, but this is my point, though. Like, as far as like when I inspect the Beatles, I'm looking like with a microscope into what they're doing, how they're moving chords around, and so that's why I can say like their music is great, but you'd have to be a real music theory guy to understand why it is.
Well, Cora, I'm sort of a little bit lost on this one.
Yeah. Well,
I'm
I'm sober today.
I'm
Oh, okay. Already I
I
lost you
ran
guys.
out of
Okay.
booze.
Letterhead, and
You know, it's
things,
funny.
things around that. And, his the scandal of him hooking up with Yoko Ono, a fucking weirdo, rich Japanese Fluxus, heiress, or maybe she wasn't rich at the time she hooked up with Lennon, but she's now
Was she an
rich anyway.
heiress? Or was
She was
sent
from
by
the upper.
heiress?
Yeah.
No, heiress, the disporting heiress, perhaps exactly. That's
And by
that's
the
a
way,
nice one, Cor.
there's a very interesting conspiracy theory around Yoko that I think is kind of creepy and cool. And if you like, I'll talk about it. But I definitely want to hit on the Theodore Adorno at some point.
Well, let's hit the Yoko while we're here.
Yeah, let's do Yoko while we're on it. Yeah.
Okay. Well, there was one point. John was working in the studios in Manhattan, one of the studios. I forget which one. Maybe I forget. But there was the secretary that worked at the front desk, or I don't know what you call her job. But this was May Pang, and she was a gorgeous little Asian woman. And John used to come in once in a while. John and Yoko would come into the studio and, cordial talk. And one day, Yoko said to John, you should date May Pang. Now, of course, this is the wild 60s, wife swapping, all this stuff. So, right?
Nice.
John winds up, with Yoko's blessing, he winds up, like, not only dating her, but moving to L.A. and living with her in L.A. for a year. All right? And I don't know. I don't get it. I mean, Yoko, there's nothing about her that turns me on whatsoever. When you look at early pictures of May Pang, you think, oh my God, she's a little hottie, Anyway, there's a great interview with May. And what's really cool of her, she's a real New Yorker. She talks like a New Yorker, which is really fun. But she talks about one day after a year being... And by the way, May Pang was the woman who was with John when he saw the UFO in New York City. Just so you know. But May, after a year of living with John and them doing really well and him actually being in love with her, one day Yoko calls up. And they were in LA at the time. Yoko calls up and says, you have to come to New York. I can help you quit smoking. I found this hypnotherapist. He's great. He helped me quit. Come to New York. You got to come to New York. So he goes to New York, and this is so spooky. May Pang was a straight up and down woman, not a conspiracy theory type. And she said after John got out of that hypnotherapy session, he announced to her that he was still madly in love with Yoko and he wanted to leave and live with her. And she said his entire personality had changed after that hypnotherapy session.
Okay, yeah, well, that's a tantalizing tidbit.
Yeah.
Oh, well, there's no question.
Beatles.
I mean, Lennon was a powerful figure, a lightning rod, possibly one of the greatest figureheads of the '60s hippie counterculture and the whole broader cultural moment.
Yeah.
And who was an overt anti-war stance. He wasn't exactly anti-capitalist that much, really, but and Yoko, is a sophisticated. I mean, I've tried to get myself to buy old Yoko noise albums, but even for somebody that likes noise, I've never talked myself into it, I have to admit. So she's somebody who's more intriguing to me than I don't really know. Like Fluxus was a coolish avant-garde
I agree.
Movement of the 50s.
It was cool.
Yeah, mm-hmm. I mean, the cooler people, the cooler cats, and the Fluxus people were the situationists, but then they were kind of too Marxoid for most people's taste, also. So, and there was a little bit of interaction between those cliques, but I mean, okay, so we've got Lennon, we've got this hypnotherapy session, we've got Lennon had a UFO sighting.
And by the way, I want to let me just quickly mention to your listeners that if you look up May Pang interview Pangmay. I think it's May. I'm not sure if it's Mae
Mm-hmm.
or May, but she has you could find this interview, and she's very frank. She gets into the darker stuff toward the end of the interview, but your listeners can definitely check it out on YouTube. Just so you know.
Sure. I mean, no, it's great. I'm trying to start to do some more detailed show notes because these episodes we've definitely ping ponged around and hit a lot of different interesting topics that people could want to pursue, in detail. But I don't know what to say next. Come on, keep going.
Well, are we still on the Yoko Ono thing?
Is there more to the Yoko?
Well, James wants to investigate her a little bit more because, she does come from big money, and so there's a darkness to her presence in the Beatles. I mean, even when you see a photograph, there's something about her that's kind of spooky and creepy.
I mean, didn't she wear dark clothes? Or sometimes there's that one in the bed where they're like, but for somewhere I think of them. Her wearing a lot of black, but I wear a lot of black, and I don't have a rich family to conspire with.
Did you ever live in New York City? Because the only two colors in New York are black or white. I mean, they were perfect New Yorkers, the two of them.
I've only visited.
But that's all I could say about Yoko. I don't have any information on her beyond that, but definitely the May Pang interview is just really curious, very curious. I'll see if I could dig it up and send you the link.
Yeah, if you find that link and you send it to me, I might edit it into the show later. But for now, it's not in the live version. But.
Right.
Let's do a little. Vinnie, you should have the chronology in your head. Okay, what year was Lennon assassinated?
I believe it was 81, wasn't it? 1981.
80 or 81.
It was 80 or 81. I'm not sure. I think maybe 80. Yeah.
Okay.
He had just released. Yeah.
Well, when did Sgt. Pepper come out?
That was 67. Summer Love.
Right. Okay. Summer of Love, 67. Lennon assassinated.
1980.
I'm just trying to kind of think about the sort of arc of the counterculture. So in the early 70s, you have it sort of just becomes kind of hippie vibes become sort of dispersed and kind of and there's like weekend hippies everywhere and everybody wants to have long hair and be seen to be smoking pot and be cool and have like open sex relationships and but meanwhile Madison Avenue reconfigures its whole aesthetic around to some degree around to incorporate hippie-dom. People have been traveling over across to Kabul and the old Silk Road and come back with their hash and their stories, and there's growth centers opening up. There's Esalen has already been running for a few years. Growth centers springing up all over the country. You got your co-ops, your organic food co-ops. You got your communes all the fuck over the place, especially in the Bay Area. There was like an insane proliferation of communal experiments, in the Bay Area in particular. And you've got a huge network of underground press, newspapers, magazines, journals, like hundreds, like even high schools. Many high schools had their own underground paper. And the anti-war movement, and then like eventually Vietnam kind of wrapped up after bazillion big marches and demos. And the Beatles were part of the soundtrack to all of that. I mean, and Lennon, Lennon was a charismatic, almost like a kind of like you think about in the Greek mythology. Hercules was the son, of a meeting of a god and a human female, right? I mean, Lennon had this sort of demigod status. Wouldn't you agree?
Totally, yeah. Maybe a little much so, if anything.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure where I'm going with that, but I'm just sort of I'm free associating here a little bit to kind of set the stage and see what else comes along.
Yeah, well, you mentioned the CIA earlier and the LSD thing. I back in the glorious days of the Novel Cafe in Santa Monica, um, I met this tall, tall guy. He was of age to have been a hippie, but he wasn't really a hippie. He was more of like a San Francisco intellectual type. And he was friends with Timothy Leary. And one day he announced to me, he said, he goes, I was there in San Francisco when the CIA was passing out the acid. And I never forgot that. I never forgot that. And I feel like the CIA thought they were doing something with mind control with acid. And the experiment totally backfired on them and created the counterculture. Because here are people now, what I think acid does, and trust me, I'm a bit of a psychedelic pioneer myself. What I think acid does is it gives you a full existential experience of reality. If you're at all sensitive, you're going to have you're going to see reality, but you're going to see it through a new lens. And what happens is then you start to question your old reality and you go, wait a second, what? Like the hippies were going, well, why do we have to follow the man? Why can't we have our own world? Why can't we live our own lives? This is where the CIA backfired, and this is where you get your underground papers and the counterculture and all the rest. And I believe that's why they started introducing heroin and cocaine into the mix in the 70s, is because they had to bring the hippies back down. They had to suppress them, otherwise they were going to cause all manner of havoc. So they had to, once again, steer the trend. And then if you look at a book like Weird Scenes from the Canyon, that, a lot of the late 60s, early 70s bands in Laurel Canyon, a lot of their parents were military. They were connected. Jim Morrison's father was a colonel or something like that. A lot of these people were connected to military. So perhaps through them, they got to steer it closer and closer in a direction they wanted it to go.
Right. Well, this is something Robert Forte, goes after in detail on another episode that we just did. Maybe at some point we should do a collage or a montage here. But and I think it's good to be open to that alternate, the sort of shadow side interpretation of the 60s. That more of it was a construct, or more of it was manipulated than maybe we've often thought. And then there's the element of the Backfire narrative. That was really the reigning default narrative of a lot of people for a long time. If you look at like Martin Jay's book Acid Dreams, that's kind of the synopsis of what goes on in that storyline. But Dark Journalist has done a recent episode talking about Lennon and Yoko's interest in the so-called Bermuda hot zone that he likes to highlight as the sort of resurgent Atlantis. Do you have any information on that?
I don't have any further than you do. I watch the same episodes, and I think I don't buy that particular branch of what he's going into personally. I don't like the idea of relying on Rudolf Steiner and Edgar Cayce as your source for the whole Atlantis thing. But, I believe where there's smoke, there's fire. There might be something to it. But I don't know. I'm just not, I don't know. I'm just not, it doesn't do anything for me, that particular concept. I love Dark Journalists. I'm a big fan. I watch them all the time. But, yeah. But I will say this. Interestingly, he had Catherine Austin Fitz on one time, and she said something that was really remarkable. She said that she got to interview an insider. And she asked him, she said straight out, how do you think you're going to get away with all of this? Do you really think you're going to get away with this? And this puts me in the mind of the COVID op, as well as all the other ops we've seen. He said to her, it's a funny thing, Catherine. He goes, He goes, we implement a plan and we think it's going well, and all of a sudden there's a wrench thrown into the works. And this is my idea about the acid thing going backwards on them. And I think COVID is going to go backwards on them too, quite honestly. So yeah, I found that little bit to be a very interesting factor. When you think about Jungian archetypes, the trickster energy comes in and pulls one on them, So yeah.
Well, yeah, there's also a very simple principle, that you can find a version of it in physics. Wherever there's an action, there's a reaction. Whenever there's a push, there's a counter push. And you can see that played out in society, in history and social dynamics all the time. From an esoteric point of view, you can see it in your own life. If you're trying to, do meditation or some version of work on yourself, and you make a particular so-called quote unquote conscious effort, often many things will pop up to get in the way of it, which then becomes another round of intention and struggle to deal with. So why wouldn't that same principle apply to the global controllers, number 1, number 2, and number 3 in their underground volcanic compounds, layers, with they're all there, the cool little scooter carts and guys in, orange jumpsuits and white helmets running around with machine guns, and,
Yeah.
they're unknown, their space stations unknown to us.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you, one thing I will say is that I will always say this. A lot of people will say, oh, these guys, the controllers are just so devious and so smart, and they just are always one step ahead of us. I don't believe they're smart. I always say they have no zen whatsoever, these guys. They're supposed to be involved in some sort of spiritual cult or whatever. Well, whatever it is, it's not working, because they have no sense of the Tao. They have no sense of allowing things to be. So I think they're pretty damn stupid, actually, but they have the money to hire very smart people.
There we have the technocrats doing the bidding of their financial masters.
Right.
Technocracy.
Right. I mean, what's going down now is scary, but I think it'll blow over eventually. I think it's going to kind of backfire on them the way all their plans do. But we're not talking about that.
Well, yeah, we weren't supposed to, but we got into it. But that's fine, because that's what the show is about, basically. But just to reel it back, I mean, what do you think? Are there any Lennon's solo songs that you wanna talk about for a minute, and then we can. I want to pin you down on another related esoteric spirituality subject that we both discussed before. But since we ostensibly started out this episode talking about the Beatles, any other iconic songs that you want to deconstruct or philosophize on?
Well, the interesting thing is when you go back to the Beatles stuff, the Beatles before they separated, the lyrics, especially in the psychedelic period, became more and more like, oh, what are they trying to say here? And of course, they took a cue from Bob Dylan in that regard. Dylan has a way of saying things without outrightly saying them, he's a genius, brilliant at that. But it's funny when you look at John's solo career and you look at Paul's solo career. Paul was the guy that was inserting little secrets and things like this into his songs. You look at John's first record, the Plastic Ono Band record, which is a remarkable piece of work. It really is. He was dead set into being totally honest. This is me. I'm not a Beatle. I'm John. And this is how I'm suffering. And I'm going to tell you all about it. And I believe that is a 100% authentic record. I don't think there's any kind of sly references to anything. He was into this philosophy of that, he didn't like Paul McCartney's writing after a point, because Paul would create a character and write like Maxwell Silverhammer or whatever. He'd create characters and then write about them. And John felt that true art, and this isn't a Yoko influence, John felt that true art has to be personal. It can't be about someone. It has to be about yourself if it's going to be true art. That was his philosophy. So I can't comment on a particular Lennon song that might, hint at something. Yeah.
Well, a big chapter that we skipped over was the Maharishi moment when the Beatles went to India and were initiated into meditation by Maharishi Yogi, or whatever his full title was.
Yeah, I'd be surprised if there's not a photo of him doing some sort of Masonic thing. I mean, in that montage video I told you about, the Dalai Lama is doing it. He's doing like the Masonic symbols. Like, this is mind blowing. I just took a bit of that.
What?
Yeah, it's wild. And to be honest, most people dislike me for saying this. They really get mad at me, but I never trusted the Dalai Lama. I never trusted him.
Yeah, there's definitely been some disturbing critiques of the Dalai Lama's the shadow side there, just because he says lots of easy, nice, sweet sound bites. A lot of that's pablum for the masses.
Isn't that his job?
Yeah.
Maybe. I mean, okay. Here, I'm gonna throw in a curveball here, since we're kind of. I'm not quite sure where to take it, but so, I mean, when I listened to the Beatles, obviously there were a billion other amazing bands throughout the 60s. I mean, music is just an ongoing zone of amazing human creativity, and it's probably what makes us human. Music and dance combined, storytelling embedded in both of those. But the particular intensity of creativity in swinging London of the mid 60s. So I connect it to the fact that there were probably, and based on hearsay, some slivers of evidence, there were a lot of Sufis hanging out in London through the 60s into the 70s. And I'm not only referring to the ones who may be better known, like Idris Shah, but there were, he had an office full of helpers. There were probably a lot of Middle Eastern Sufis who had emigrated into London, and you also had Bennett, and you had these former Uspenskian and Gurdjieffian groups all over London, and together all these guys may have been enabling or facilitating like a force field of some sort. I mean, I don't that's a little bit cold of a term, but there was a downflow and influx of creative juice, which if you wanted to invoke the phrase baraka, you could do that. That's a phrase from Middle Eastern folk culture and Sufi terminology. Like I said, I'm not inherently a Beatles devotee, but their music, they just have such an unbelievable outpouring of creative energy that what was facilitating that? Was it just their individual interpersonal chemistry, or could there have been a field that was enabled across the whole greater area of London that I don't know. I'm just no. This is a place for speculation. I'm mildly inebriated. There you go.
Okay, I have two theories connected to this, and it's the very reason I'm smiling right now. One is that the girls fell in love with the Beatles, right? All the young girls, and it's actually quite true that some of them would go to the Beatles show and literally have an orgasm in their seat. All right, so you have this incredible outpouring of love that is saturating the entire planet. It wasn't just American girls or British girls. It was everywhere. They couldn't even get away with being in India without being recognized, And so I have a theory that was one of the reasons for the love thing that the hippies were picking up on, that combined with the acid. I had a personal experience with acid that when I would wake up the next morning after a particularly intense trip, I might be at a coffee house or something like that, and I'd look around me and look at people, and I would just love them for no good reason. I call it the acid hangover. So that combination, I mean, when you look at the 60s, all the combinations of things that connected, when you talk about Baraka, it was like a grand influx of Baraka from the higher powers. It was truly like a remarkable blessing. I used to joke that the Beatles, the goddess Shakti, looked at the four Beatles when they were first forming and said, you know what? Ding, I'm going to give them the magic. And the rest was history, you know. My second belief is this. There are two kinds of artists. One who takes all this energy from their beloved, their loving audience. You know, can you imagine playing a concert in front of 20,000 people and all of them love you and they're cheering for you and they're just sending you their energy? You could take this energy and put it into your ego, get lazy, and not have the great output that you once had before. Or you can take this energy and wire it into your nervous system that you do even better and better work. And I think that's what happened with the Beatles. They did some remarkable work because of the support of the entire planet.
Nice.
So that's
bingo.
That's my
Great. Mm-hmm. Bingo. That's that's a sampleable sample right there. What you just said. You have to pull it out and make a clip out of it.
Cool.
Sweet. Well, all right. Well, let's talk to our producer guy here.
Yeah.
Producer guy, unveil thyself. Ah, yes, there he is.
What, do we have any some dark and juicy Beatles scandalous, scintillating conspiracies?
We went too far into the love and light shit. Oh, I'm sorry. Oh my God, we're supposed to be looking for the reptilian. Where are the reptilians in the Beatles mix?
Right.
Hippie, blah blah, peace, blah, hippie, something. Just kidding.
Well, the right-wing conspiracy theorists are big on that. Aleister Crowley was on the cover of Sgt. Pepper among their influence.
Fucking Aleister Crowley.
Well,
dump that guy in the trash.
That doesn't seem surprising that he'd be on there.
Yeah.
To me, like, given the Englishness and the magicness, people want to know about magic with the K.
The two darkest, to me, the darkest is simply the Paul is dead one. And there's a great YouTube channel. Like I said, I keep an open mind. So, like, I don't believe Paul died, but if I get enough evidence that will convince me, maybe I'll believe Paul died, you know.
Why is it? What's the deal? Why are we supposed to think Paul's dead? What happened?
Well, the story is he got into a car crash. I mean, actually, business-wise, this would make sense that they tried to find a double for Paul. So the story goes that he got into a car crash and he accidentally died. And the Beatles were making so much money for Britain that they had to keep the Beatles going. And if they had put somebody else in, they would lose their magic, you know. So they found a guy with the talent and could play left-handed and could sing and write great, which to me is like, how do you find this person? But okay, whatever. You know, and then, you know, he was replaced and put into the Beatles. This is around the time of the Revolver record, just around the time of Revolver. You know, I like, first of all, Paul's songwriting would have to change a whole lot.
Yeah, I was thinking, as a forensic music guy, is there any change at that time? You know,
well, there certainly is, but there's change with John and the entire band. It's the whole thing has changed. You know, don't forget, you know, Harrison picked up a sitar and is interested in Indian music, and John was taking a shit ton of acid. Like, every day the guy was tripping. He completely lost his ego to the point where he didn't care anymore. He just like, whatever you guys want, that's cool. I'm okay. You know,
they were taken over by ancient Tibetan spirits while they were high, meditating in India, and they came back as holy, possessed beings by the ancient spirit that they got in India on acid. And
that's as good a conspiracy theory as any. Yeah, you know. But I will say this: the two darkest I could think of. There's a great YouTube channel called the Winged Beetle or the Rotten Apple. I forget which one it is, but he has an entire long series, and it really is dark. It's kind of creepy, the whole thing. He does it really well. It's a lot of fun. The other one is the Theodore Adorno thing because of where it came from. Theodore Adorno, yeah.
I was just going to say, what's Theodore Adorno?
Oh, okay. Theodore Adorno was a German music theorist who he was a scholar, and he wrote about popular music, pop music, but he also wrote about classical, and he was a big fan of Wagner. And the reason why that was because Adorno despised repetition because he felt like it was a mind control device, which makes sense. So he liked Wagner because the music never kind of recapitulated and it just kept wandering and wandering, and that's what he felt was, real art music was that. The story about Adorno is that early in the Beatles' career, he bought the entire Beatles catalog and wrote their songs, began writing their songs for them and handing them to him. Absolutely ridiculous. But where it comes from is dark. It comes from God bless James Corbett for discovering this, the whole conspiracy about this, and the one that they chatter about all the time, came from one document that showed up on the internet. And you're probably familiar with it if you're into conspiracy theories, John Coleman's Committee of 300 document. And he came out and said, Theodore Adorno wrote the Beatles music and blah, 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 blah. I talked to James about this. James narrowed it down to this one document. There wasn't any other source for this. And everybody took it and ran with it. And that's how conspiracy theories start, So,
like the real reason Stuart Sutcliffe wasn't in the Beatles anymore? Because he wouldn't take the blood oath and kill the baby and drink the baby's blood. Right. So he couldn't go on to the next level because he wouldn't partake in the demonic empowerment of the Beatles.
Yeah.
I was smoking about conspiracies today. There's a little difference than when I could drink about them.
When you smoke about them, they become real. So, yeah. So those are the two darkest I could think of. Well, actually, the very darkest is, the MK Ultra murder of John Lennon, which I believe is real.
Okay. I didn't know MK Ultra did it. Oh, they MK Ultra'd the guy.
MK Ultra is a CIA program for creating killers.
Like Manchurian type. They Manchurian candidated the assassin is this. Mm-hmm. Like Sirhan.
Yeah. Now, I have a theory about this, too, by the way.
Well, that's from a book by Bresler, Who Killed John Lennon, A Conspiracy. Mm-hmm. Right? Is that the main source for the MK Ultra argument here?
There's been a number of books about this. There's been a number of them. So I don't know if there's that one source. There's quite a few angles that people took. And what's really remarkable is that Chapman was carrying a copy of Catcher in the Rye, which is very strange because that's considered one of the programming books. If you look into these things, you find out about this, that they use these books.
They made me read it in high school.
Yeah. Have you killed anybody lately? Oh, you wouldn't even remember if you did.
Not that I can remember. As far as I can remember, I've never killed anyone. So what am I supposed to think? What am I supposed to believe?
Mm-hmm. Well, whether that particular analysis or claim is true or literally true or not, is that the beginning of the notion of mind-controlled, mass killers? I'm trying. There were other incidents of these sort of serial killers and mass killings. But let's see, when, because it became a part of sort of folklore that these people are are mind controlled, that there's a hypnotic implant or program or something like that. And the right wing, the Republican people believe that they're set up to do this in order to by the Democrats in order to enable justify gun control legislation.
Right.
Right? Isn't that's an argument from the right?
Yeah, indeed.
The Democrats people that are blue leaning, they don't go there at all. But there is a strange complete cultural inability to really think about these what's the word? It's not serial killers are that's one persona of these psychopaths, right, or whatever. But the people that go on these shooting rampages, that's I'm blanking out on the right adjective for that, but
fucked.
Anyway, I'm just wondering when MK Ultra was revealed to the public under the the Church Commission hearings in the early to mid 70s, when they gradually were getting access to CIA archives and discovering all these nefarious programs, many of which were overtly illegal on the part of the CIA. And the MK Ultra was kind of the most salacious and disturbing of them, arguably, alongside Operation Mockingbird. The attempt to control the domestic press, but there's a panoply of techniques that were experimented with under MK Ultra. You invoked MK Ultra earlier, Vinnie. I'm just trying to I'm questioning
by the end of this show. No, it's happening now. You have just one eye showing on the screen.
Oh, sorry. Okay. Sorry, I'm leaning into the computer. Okay. I'm leaning. Yeah, that's right. I'm giving. I don't have the right.
Yeah, was that it? You were sending Masonic codes.
Yes, Masonic codes. Right.
I thought it was like bad posture or something. Man.
No, I was just leaning into the. I was leaning into the computer to overcome my inebriation and try to make a complicated point, about getting conspiratorial scholarship here. When did the concept of the mind-controlled mass killer kick in? Was it with Chapman and the Lennon shooting, or was it before that?
Oh, it goes way back. Sirhan. There's thoughts about him being MK Ultra-ized.
Right. Sure. Okay. Well, there's the idea of the patsy. Okay, that's one of the pivot pillars of the assassination conspiracy research of the 60s and 70s. The patsy, the person that you blame it on. Then there's the killer, the assassin is themselves manipulated or mind controlled in some way. Yeah.
Money's a pretty good form of mind control.
Right. It's an incentive, that's for sure.
It works on most assassins. Yeah.
Especially Chinese money these days. Chinese money is a real big mind control factor. World Economic Forum, all these guys.
Right. Well, they have, that's the carrot. They leverage the carrot, the big carrot, which is it's not just it's not necessarily just a suitcase full of cash, $100 bills neatly wrapped. It's like future jobs, advisory board memberships, sinecures. Dasha's on the Baltic. Who knows what?
Yeah.
And then there's the implied threat. If you're not with the program, well, we're not going to fund your research, or we're not going to sponsor your chairmanship or your department, or we're going to cut off some contracts that we have control over with some big entity, some big corporate entity or whatever.
That's what's going on right now. People who are afraid to blow the whistle because they might lose their career. It's really sad because people's lives are counting on it.
All right, let's wrap it up on this positive note. Hey.
Well, you want it dark, man. So
Where do you think
Yeah.
if John is alive, where is he? Is he?
Good question.
He replaced
Good
his
question.
son Julian. Do you ever think they look too much alike? Well, after they hooked him up to infant blood transfusions and stem cells, they were able to reduce his age, and then he took over as his son Julian, which is why they sound the same and look alike so much.
Oh.
Yes.
if you post that on the internet,
if
you post that on the internet,
me a headache.
You post that on the internet, that'll start going viral, and people will believe it.
It's now out there. The truth is somewhere.
You're making me. I'm free associating to some gossip. I was on the outer periphery of the Leary Beverly Hills circles here, and a girl who was in their periphery in that scene hooked up for a while with Julian Lennon, if I'm remembering correctly, anyway. But I won't put a name to it. But
and she said he was actually John.
No, not that. No, I didn't know her that well. I'm just sort of like it's just triggering a memory from the culture, the inventory.
Well, there's a big connection between the two most popular Sean Lennon videos that came out, and I happen to have some insight on that because a buddy of mine produced both of his rock videos. And the first one had some references to conspiracy theory in it, and they were pretty blatant references. The second, and that was also filmed in like a Masonic lodge, right? The next one was about, Jason, you would know about this, the rocket scientist who was an advocate of Crowley.
Parsons, Jack Parsons.
Parsons, yeah, he wrote a song about Parsons, and my friend Rich did a brilliant kind of Monty Python-esque montage of images for this video. It's absolutely brilliant. I talked to Rich one day. I said, what's all this about? Because Rich is anything but a conspiracy theorist. And he said to me, he goes, we were just fucking with people with the Masonic Lodge thing, And he said to me, Vinnie, if you've ever been in a film studio and watch a film being made, they really don't have time to deal with these details, around, adding Masonic imagery and all this stuff into the mix. I don't personally believe that, but he just thinks it's not possible even. They don't have time for that sort of thing.
There's whole departments dedicated to making everything look a particular way for whatever, you know what I'm saying? You just need go like this, and then we need to put this on the well, I'll get that thing right where you wanted it.
Hey, well, I just real. Go on, finish your thought, and then I have a concluding remark I'd like to make.
Well, the famous Neo's passport image, where it expires on September 11th, 2001. It's kind of interesting that happens, but there's a whole other side theory called synchromysticism that talks about that these things aren't predictive programming, that they're not premeditated, that they're actually the collective psyche of humanity casting a shadow beforehand before an event happens.
That's pretty good.
Wait, this is your take on Christopher Nolan's synchromysticism model?
Yeah.
I'm not sure if it's quite a model, but
it conforms.
I haven't heard it. I have
tripped out on once.
I haven't heard it. I haven't heard it described exactly like that. I mean, I've had a hard time following Chris. I mean, I think Chris is an amazing, insane scholar of pop culture and conspiracy zones, and I've actually extended an invite to him to get on this
cool.
platform. But I don't have the memory, the brain for numbers and dates, because his whole thing is this hyper minute, almost it's kind of a weird mutant version of numerology. where he finds meaning in all these dates and places when things happen, where they happened. And it's all ties back to the Cocteau Twins singer, that she's like the prophet of the age. And all of her lyrics can be, he uses her lyrics as a sort of interpretive matrix to understand everything that's going on in the modern world.
Wow.
Basically. I mean, that's how I read his shit anyway. I mean, Secret Sun blog and group on Facebook for those who aren't turned on to Christopher Knowles. He wrote a book back a while ago called Our Gods Wear Spandex. It was basically about the history of comics or comic book culture. Our Gods Wear Spandex. Christopher Knowles, Knowles. Christopher, we're calling out to you right now. Come on the show. Talk to us. We give you an open platform.
Definitely invite him.
Cool.
Invite him.
Okay, so Vinnie, here's my little. We can keep chatting, or wrap it up now. But this came up in the previous conversation we had just the other day of Discordianism. Remember the goddess Eris? She has an apple, and it has a K inscribed on it, which stands for Callisti. And I don't remember. Maybe I'll look it up on the Wikipedia in a second. But she, the golden apple of chaos. But it's, in Discordianism, chaos is like a fruitful principle. It's not the chaos of destruction and death. It's the chaos. It's the uncontrolled. It's the spontaneous. And Beatles record label was called
Apple.
So what do we do with that?
Well, we took a bite out of it already, so I don't think there's much else to do.
Nice one. We took a bite out of it already. Well, okay. Is that okay? Let Vinnie. Well, Vinnie, last any places people can see you perform coming up?
I do my busking. I do my busking over on Westminster, if you're in Los Angeles at least, on Westminster by the Groundworks Coffee House, kind of catty-corner to the boardwalk. I do that on Friday, Saturday, and sometimes Sunday from 2 to 4. I do have a gig with my awesome band, The Blue Kind.
The Blue Kind,
yeah. Great band. Just a lot of fun. And we're going to play for our lead singer's birthday at the Mint on the 23rd of October. So.
Okay, those are good.
Yeah, there's not much, like, for a musician, it's a really hard time right now. Although I have to say the phone call I got earlier was from my keyboard player, Rob Mullins, who is an absolute, he's one of the top jazz piano players in Los Angeles. And he just called me up to tell me, he's got gigs 7 days a week this week, so he's doing good. But he got vaccinated, so.
Right. All right. Well, let's not go there. We've pounded that one into the ground on other episodes.
Right.
Pressing is a topic as it may be. Yeah. So we've been running your tagline and your handle on the screen. People should have seen it. They can figure out how to get hold of you. And thank you for downloading with us, and being our Beatles scholar and forensic investigator for the day.
Yeah, pleasure. By the way, just to let your folks know, on my YouTube channel, I have a series called The Band with Kaleidoscope Ears, where I team up with James Corbett. And we break down the Beatles music in terms of the lore around the time and the lore around the song, and also the music theory behind it. Some people that are into music theory analysis might dig it. And if you want to really go deep, I started writing a book on music theory to correct all the ridiculous notions in academia about music that are simply flat out wrong. And I come up with a revamping of music theory, and I started writing a book, but I just didn't want to. I wanted the ideas to come out, so on my YouTube channel, you could check out Fragments of Infinity, which presents my music theory and how I see it.
Wow, Fragments of Infinity. Nice. Is that the title of the book as well?
Yeah, yeah.
Awesome. Wow. Inspirational title, Fragments of Infinity.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks. Yeah, I mean, the idea is that you have a circle. Music is a circle. If you look at it at least in two dimensions, and so you have no re mi fa sol la ti do, or all 12 notes of the chromatic scale. A circle is infinite. You have to pick something out of the circle. Finite pieces of the circle, right? So music theory itself is a fragment of the infinity of music. That idea.
Beautiful. Okay.
All right. Well, it was a great pleasure, man. Thanks for having me on.
Ciao, Vinnie.
Take
Thanks
care.
for coming.
Yeah, pleasure. Take care.
Good one. That's a wrap.
Almost.
That's a wrap.
I pushed
All
the
right.
button.
All right, now I could drink.
Okay, who's got the pizza? But